The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, a steady rhythm against the cobblestones of Waverly Hollow. It wasn't a violent rain, but a quiet, deliberate one, the kind that seemed to wash the world clean of sound, leaving only the steady ticking of time. Somewhere along the narrow lane, hidden between the ivy and the shadow of old chimneys, stood a clock shop whose sign had long since faded to grey. The townsfolk called it the Clockmaker's rain, though no one could quite remember why. Some said it was because every time the rain came, the clockmaker's windows glowed with golden light, as if time itself refused to sleep inside that shop. Others whispered that the man within was no ordinary craftsman, that his clocks did not just measure time, but borrowed it. Tonight, beneath the whispering drizzle and the slow hum of thunder in the hills, the old brass bell above the door chimed once. Evelyn Blackwood's voice floated gently into the night air. Welcome, dear listener. This is Midnight Murmurs Radio. Her tone was soft, each word wrapped in calm and shadow. Tonight, we drift into a story that lives between seconds where rain remembers and clocks still dream. Before we begin, she whispered, lie back and close your eyes. Feel the weight of your day fall away like leaves in autumn wind. Breathe in slowly. Hold it for a moment. Hold it and let it go. You are safe here, surrounded by the soft murmur of rain. Let the outside world fade and imagine yourself standing at the corner of Waverly Hollow just as the last light of evening curls behind the hills. The air smells faintly of metal and moss. The rain has softened to a mist, and in the distance a dim ember glow spills from the window of the clock shop. Inside, an old man bends over a table of gears, glass, faces, and fragments of brass. His hands are slow but precise, guided by habit more than sight. They call him Mr. Dorian Halley, though the town hasn't spoken his name in years. He once repaired every clock in Waverly Hollow, from the church tower to the smallest pocket watch. But when his wife, Eliza, died one November evening, he stopped mending time for others. Instead, he began building one final clock, one that, they say, could make the rain remember her voice. The rain deepens as Evelyn's voice lowers. The story goes, she murmurs that Dorian believed time had folds like fabric, and that if he found the right stitch, he could pull two moments together, past and present, life and loss. Tonight, the sound of ticking fills the air. Each clock in his shop beats to a slightly different rhythm, creating a strange harmony, like raindrops striking glass in syncopated time. He works under the soft light of a single oil lamp, its glow trembling with the wind. On the workbench lies a small silver clock, unfinished, its face open. Hands motionless, waiting, he whispers to it softly, just one more turn, my love, one more minute with you. Outside, the rain answers. Some say, if you walk by the shop on nights like this, you can hear two voices, his and hers, carried faintly beneath the sound of falling water. But no one dares to stop and listen for long. Evelyn's voice returns, calm and slow. Time, dear listener, is not a river. It's a circle, quietly closing in on itself. And somewhere, between one tick and the next, something begins to stir. The oil lamp flickers once, and for the briefest moment, Dorian's reflection in the glass does not move with him. A soft whisper ripples through the clocks, not mechanical, but human. Dorian, the old man, freezes, his breath caught in his chest. Rain slips down the window pane like tears. Elisa? Whispers. But the voice is gone, swallowed by the rhythm of rain. And still he keeps working, one gear, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. Evelyn's words fall to a whisper as the night deepens. The rain keeps time for the lonely. And within the clockmaker's shop, something ancient begins to wake. The ticking slows, the rain softens, and her final words fade into the dark. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The following night, the rain returned, thinner this time, more like a whisper against glass than a storm. Waverley Hollow slept beneath a pale veil of mist, and only the faint orange halo of street lamps marked where the town still breathed. Inside the clock shop, the same golden glow pulsed softly through the windows. But tonight, something in the rhythm of that light had changed. Evelyn's voice drifted once again into the quiet. "You are still here, dear listener," she murmured, low and steady. "Let your breath match the rain, slow, even, calm. The hour is late, and the clocks of Waverley Hollow are still keeping secrets." Inside, Dorian Halley sat in silence. The small silver clock lay before him, its gears now assembled, its heart complete, but it would not tick. He turned the key once, twice. Nothing, only the faint creak of the chair and the soft patter of rain outside. He leaned closer, whispering, "Don't leave me waiting, Eliza. You promised." His voice cracked like the edge of old glass. For years, he had worked in solitude, his mind trapped between invention and grief. Every piece of brass, every delicate gear was carved with purpose, to echo the sound of her laughter, the timing of her footsteps, the rhythm of her breath beside him at dawn. Yet the clock remained silent. Outside, the rain deepened again, as if listened. The sound of the drops grew steady, almost patterned a rhythm that mirrored the missing heartbeat within the silver clock. Dorian froze. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. The rain was ticking, not against the roof, not on the windows, but in unison with the stillness of his creation. Look down. The second hand shivered once, almost imperceptibly, then stopped. He felt his pulse in his fingertips. "Elisa," he whispered again. This time, the whisper didn't vanish. It came back, faint, soft, but unmistakable. "I remember. Fla. El. La. El. El. El." Dorian's eyes widened. The voice was not around him, not from the rain, not even from the clock. It was within him. A memory stirred, the last night they had together, when she asked him if time could love someone back. "If I build something beautiful enough," he had said, "perhaps it will." And now, beneath the quiet dripping eaves, it seemed time had learned to answer. Evelyn's voice, low and dreamlike, carried through the mist. There are moments when the boundaries between remembering and returning blur, when the heart calls louder than the clock, and the rain begins to listen. Dorian stood and moved toward the window. The street outside shimmered with reflections. Not just puddles, but images. In each slick surface, he could almost see her face, blurred, shifting, caught between drops. His trembling hand reached for the glass, tracing where her outline might have been. And then a faint sound rose from behind him. The clock had begun to tick, slowly, deliberately, like the pulse of something alive. Tick, tock, tick. Each sound vibrated through the room, steady but uneven, as if it were learning to breathe. He turned back, eyes wide, tears pooling. The silver hands were moving backward. "No," he murmured, "that's not." But then he heard it, her laugh, so soft. It barely disturbed the air. It came from the clock, from the rain, from everywhere. The lamp flickered. Shadows stretched across the walls like ghosts of the past. In the glass of an old grandfather clock, he saw not his reflection, but hers standing in the corner, smiling faintly, eyes full of autumn light. "Elisa, brede, but," she said. "Nothing." She only raised her hand and pointed toward the small silver clock, where the rain now drummed with a rhythm almost musical. Outside, thunder murmured softly over the hills, and the smell of wet oak filled the room. Evelyn's tone deepened, wrapping each word in velvet stillness. In the quiet town of Waverly Hollow, where clocks dream and rain remembers, something has begun to turn, not forward nor backward, but inward, toward the heart of time itself. Dorian stepped closer to the clock. Their hands continued to spin in reverse, faster now, until they blurred into a silver circle. His workshop flickered candles burning in reverse, gears unturning, rain rising instead of falling. The room filled with a hum, deep and low, like the world drawing breath. Then silence. Everything stopped. Only the rain outside remained, whispering her name. As the story fades, Evelyn whispered, her voice like the last echo of a dream. "Allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The night is long, and the rain still remembers." When Dorian opened his eyes, the sound of rain no longer came from outside. It surrounded him, endless and close, as if he was standing beneath a great watery dome. The world was still his workshop, yet not quite. The walls shimmered like wet glass, each reflecting a different moment in time. His tools hung suspended midair, dripping light instead of oil. The air smelled faintly of brass and lilac, her perfume from the summer of their wedding. He whispered her name again, and the droplets trembled, rippling with sound. Elisa. The clock before him now stood taller than himself, its silver face glowing faintly. The hands moved in perfect reverse, and with each backward tick, he felt the weight of years peeling away from his bones. Evelyn's voice drifted in, steady, close, almost inside his ear. "You are still with me, dear listener. Stay calm. Let your breath fall with the rhythm of the rain. You are safe, even here, inside the hour that remembers what the world forgot." Dorian stepped closer. Behind the clock's glass surface, shapes began to form, blurred outlines of streets, of lanterns glowing through mist, of figures carrying umbrellas that seemed to fade He reached out, and the glass gave way like water. He stumbled forward, falling gently into the image, landing on cobblestones that gleamed with reflected lamplight. The sound of the rain here was strange, not random, but orchestrated, each drop part of a grand design. The entire street ticked. The lamps flickered in measured intervals. The puddles formed perfect circles, and even the distant thunder sounded like a heartbeat, muffled beneath centuries. Waverly Hollow, but not the one he knew. The town looked alive, anew, untouched by dust or time. Children laughed somewhere far away, and church bells rang clear and unbroken. Dorian turned in slow wonder, realizing that he had stepped into a memory, a living fragment preserved within the mechanism of his creation. "Elisa," he called, though the word trembled with disbelief. A figure stood beneath an umbrella by the clock tower, her silhouette graceful, familiar. She didn't turn, but the way she held her hand out into the rain made his heart ache. He moved closer, but as he did, the world shimmered again. The clock tower bell began to toll, once, twice. But instead of sound, each strike released a wave of cold air that rippled through the streets. The laughter stopped. The lamps dimmed. The rain slowed. Then, the figure turned. It was Eliza, but younger. Her face soft, her eyes bright, untouched by the sorrow he carried. "Se Esmile, you came back," she said gently. "You promised." "Where are we?" whispered. "The hour you couldn't finish," she answered. "The one you built to remember me." He reached for her hand, but his fingers met only rain. Her image flickered. "I tried," he said, his voice breaking. "I tried to stop time for you." "You can't stop what you are part of," she replied, her tone like the faint chime of a clock at midnight. "Time doesn't keep us. We keep Italiano." Evelyn's voice folded softly over the scene, blending with the rainfall. "Sometimes, when grief becomes rhythm, the heart builds a world for itself, a place between waking and memory, where what we love lingers, waiting to be remembered." Dorian closed his eyes. The rain had stopped ticking. It now fell naturally, like a sigh. He opened them again and found himself standing beneath the clock tower. The silver clock was gone. In its place was a great pendulum, swinging gently through the mist. Each motion left trails of light, and within those trails, moments of his life replayed: her laughter, her illness, her last breath. He stood watching as the pendulum slowed, the images dissolving one by one, until only the rain remained. "Elisa, Elisa, nu," he whispered one last time. A single droplet landed on his hand, warm, not cold. Her voice answered softly, carried by the wind. "You already have all the time we shared." Then the bell tolled once more, and the world shifted. The street melted back into brass and gears. The sky folded into smoke, and Dorian was once again in his workshop. The clock sat before him, ticking gently now, steady and calm. For the first time in years, he felt no need to wind it again. He sat back, closed his eyes, and listened. The rain outside played like a lullaby. Evelyn's final words floated through the sound. "When time begins to dream, Even the rain remembers love. Let it carry you now, dear listener, away from worry, away from the waking world. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The night fell slowly over Waverley Hollow, the mist curling around chimneys and gutters like restless fingers. Inside the clockmaker's shop, the silver clock ticked steadily, each sound a gentle insistence that time was still moving. Though not entirely of this world, Evelyn Blackwood's voice drifted into the still air, soft as the rain that pressed against the window pane. Close your eyes, dear listener, and let the night draw you into the quiet corners of memory. Here, even the smallest tick carries a story. Dorian Harley leaned back in his chair, his fingers brushing lightly over the brass gears that littered the workbench. 4 days he had watched the clocks, listening to their rhythm, and 4 days the rain had whispered alongside them. But tonight, the ticking carried something different. Beneath the familiar heartbeat of the silver clock, a faint murmur threaded its way through the room. A voice, older than memory, softer than any wind. He tilted his head, ears straining. It spoke not in words, but in rhythm, in cadence. A name, perhaps, or several names overlapping, spoken so lightly that the rain outside seemed to echo them. Evelyn's voice blended with it, hypnotic and low. Sometimes time remembers more than we do. Sometimes the clocks themselves hold echoes of those who cannot leave. Dorian's chest tightened. The workshop seemed to expand and contract with the sound. Shadows of old clocks stretched across the walls, tall and crooked, as though the instruments themselves were bending to listen. The hum of the pendulum grew into a chorus. Each tick now carried a memory not his own. A child crying under a storm, a soldier counting hours on a distant battlefield, a young woman whispering promises that would never be kept. He realized the clocks were speaking together, forming a network of lives, long gone, each trapped in the rhythm of rain and brass. The silver clock's hands trembled, then paused mid-motion. A cold draught swept the room, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and soot, Eliza's favorite perfume mixed with smoke from years ago. He shivered, not from cold, but from recognition. Somewhere between one tick and the next, someone had entered the space between seconds. Someone who had never left. Evelyn's tone sank lower, almost reverent. Listen carefully, for not all who inhabit time are alive. Some linger, their stories trapped in the folds of clocks and the cadence of rain. Dorian stepped closer to the silver clock. The voice grew louder, clearer, though still woven with the rhythm of countless others. He could almost hear the words, "Now, help, remember." "Don't forget," the whispers interlaced with his own memories, blending his grief with centuries of sorrow. His hand hovered over the clock face, trembling. Could he open it? Could he release them? Outside, the rain intensified, as if urging him forward. Each drop fell in perfect harmony with the voices, a drumbeat for those who could not move on. Shadows began to flicker against the walls, not just reflections of clocks, but shapes of figures. A man hunched over a workbench, a girl with hair soaked in rain, a woman reaching through glass. Their faces were unfamiliar, yet achingly intimate. The tick-tock of the silver clock synchronized with their silent movement, pulling Dorian into the rhythm of the unseen. "Elisa," he whispered, voice barely audible. "For a moment," the whisper answered him, threading through the chorus of echoes. "We are we wait." His heart pounded in tandem with the pendulum. The realization struck. The clocks were not only keeping time, they were keeping souls. The rain outside had ceased, leaving a silence so heavy that every heartbeat seemed amplified. Evelyn's voice, soft as velvet, wrapped around the stillness. And in this quiet, dear listener, the rain listens too, recording the whispers of lives unseen. For every chime, every drop, holds a story waiting to be remembered. Dorian's hand finally pressed on the clock's glass. The voices surged, not loud, but insistent, like the tide brushing against the shore. He felt the pressure of countless hours, griefs, joys, farewells, and promises pressing into him, intertwining with his own. The workshop seemed to breathe, alive with the pulse of lives intertwined by time. He closed his eyes, letting the ticking fill him. Each breath aligned with a distant heartbeat that was not his own. And then, slowly, the voices began to fade, not gone, but folded delicately into the rhythm of the silver clock. The shadows retracted. The workshop returned to its ordinary size. The rain outside returned to its gentle patter. Evelyn's soft whisper concluded the night. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The rain continued, soft and persistent, weaving silver threads over the rooftops of Waverly Hollow. Inside the clockmaker's shop, Dorian Halley sat before the silver clock, his fingers tracing the delicate etchings along its face. Each tick seemed to echo with the weight of centuries, carrying whispers he could almost understand. Evelyn Blackwood's voice, gentle and low, drifted through the room. Let your mind settle, dear listener. Feel the rhythm of the rain. Let it draw you closer to the spaces between moments where memory lives and time remembers itself. Tonight, the shop felt larger than it should have been. Shadows pooled in corners that had never existed before. The air carried a faint scent of damp earth and lilac. Eliza's favorite, as though she had walked through the door a moment ago. The silver clock's hands moved slowly, deliberate, spinning in a rhythm that was neither forward nor backward, but suspended in possibility. Dorian's eyes widened as he noticed a reflection in its polished surface. A figure, faint and shimmering, standing just behind him. He turned, but no one was there. Only the soft glow of the oil lamp illuminated the scattered gears and tools. He swallowed, heart tight. The reflection shifted again, and he understood. It was not bound by the physical room. It was somewhere else, somewhere between time and memory. "Elisa? Elisa?" he whispered. The rain outside fell in perfect sync with the faint pulse he felt from the clock, and then the figure moved closer, not with hurried steps, but gliding, as if riding the rhythm of the silver hands themselves. Her face was clear now, luminous in the lamplight, yet impossibly distant. Each blink of Dorian's eyes seemed to stretch moments into minutes, minutes into hours. Evelyn's voice murmured, "The rain remembers her, the clocks remember her, and now he must remember too. The hour of reconciliation has come. Dorian reached out, hand trembling. The reflection responded, reaching toward him as well. Their fingertips met on the glass. But he felt warmth, not cold. Time seemed to sigh. He could hear it in the ticking, not a mechanical sound, but a heartbeat that belonged to the hours themselves. The shop dissolved around him. He was no longer among tools and scattered gears, but standing in the streets of Waverley Hollow, as it had been decades ago, when the first rain of autumn fell over cobblestones and lantern light. The townsfolk were shadows, blurred and distant, yet the rain painted every detail in sharp, magical clarity. And there she was, Eliza, alive in that memory, laughing under the eaves, hands wet with rain. "I waited," she said softly, voice blending with the drizzle. "I waited for you to find me here." Dorian's throat tightened. I understood in that moment that the silver clock had never been about stopping time. It had been about remembering, gathering the fragments of life that love had scattered. He stepped closer, feeling each heartbeat of the town, each pulse of rain, each chime of the countless clocks that had borne witness. Evelyn's whisper brushed through the scene. "Sometimes we build worlds within moments to preserve the ones we cannot hold, and sometimes we must step inside to set them free." He reached Elisa, and the world bent around them. Rain spun in slow arcs, catching the golden light of lamps long extinguished. Shadows and reflections danced along the walls, tracing centuries of memory. She smiled at him, eyes filled with calm, sorrow, and gentle joy. "You've remembered," she said, "and that is enough." The silver clock in the workshop ticked steadily, anchoring reality. Dorian felt the weight of decades lift from his chest. Time had not stopped. It had only waited for understanding. Outside, the rain softened, settling into a lullaby that embraced the entire town. The shadows receded, leaving only the quiet glow of the lamplight, the gentle ticking of the clock, and the soft whisper of memory carried in every drop. Evelyn's closing words floated through the silence. "As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep." The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, falling in silver threads that caught the last glimmers of lamplight in Waverley Hollow. Inside the clockmaker's shop, Dorian Halley sat in quiet reverence, watching the silver clock tick with steady precision. Each movement of the hands carried the memory of love, of loss, and of time. Evelyn Blackwood's voice floated softly over the scene, slow and soothing, guiding the listener through the folds of night. "Lie back, dear listener. Let the rhythm of the rain ease the weight of the day from your shoulders. Let your breath match its gentle cadence. You are safe here, wrapped in the quiet corners of memory." Dorian's eyes lingered on the silver hands, now moving forward with the assurance of hours that could be lived fully, remembered fully. The reflection of Eliza shimmered faintly, not as a ghost, but as a memory settled into peace. She did not speak, but her presence suffused the room, as if the very air had learned to breathe with her. The town beyond the window was hushed, streets glistening with rain, and the faint lamplight reflected in puddles that rippled in gentle harmony. Outside, the world moved quietly, yet every droplet seemed aware, every shadow seemed to whisper, The moment had been remembered, and time itself had exhaled. Evelyn's voice softened further. Somewhere in the turning of the clock, in the murmur of rain, there exists a space where love endures beyond the limits of hours. Dorian has stepped into that space, as can you. Even for a fleeting heartbeat, the shadows in the shop flickered, forming the outlines of the countless lives carried by the clocks, echoes of happiness, sorrow, promise, and regret. They had all been gathered and gently returned to their place in the tapestry of time. Dorian leaned back, eyes closed, the tension of decades falling away. He could feel the pulse of the rain in his chest, the heartbeat of the town beneath the silver drops, the slow hum of the clocks vibrating with quiet certainty. Every tick reminded him that moments, once lost, could be honored, if not and yet, he did not rush. The night was long, and the rhythm of the rain was enough. It was enough to remember, enough to honor. In Ogdofel, Evelyn's tone carried a whisper of warmth, inviting, intimate. Take this calm with you, dear listener. Breathe it in. Allow the night to fold around you, and let your mind drift as the rain drifts, soft and inevitable. Dorian opened his eyes, glancing at the rows of clocks that lined the walls, each a testament to time's persistence, each a silent guardian of memory. The silver clocks before him ticked without falter, its chime the last of the evening, a gentle bell that resonated through the room and out into the sleeping streets. The rain had slowed, and the mist of Waverley Hollow seemed to lift slightly, revealing rooftops and chimneys softened in silver light. Outside, shadows retreated, leaving the night serene and full of possibility. Evelyn's voice lingered, a final caress of sound over the stillness. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the night cradle you, let the rain lull you, and remember, moments may pass, but the memory of love remains eternal. Dorian stood, placing his hand lightly on the silver clock, as if sealing a promise. He glanced toward the window, seeing only the gentle swirl of rain and the faint glimmer of lamplight, yet knowing that something had changed, that the hours now held a new, quiet dignity. And for the listener, Evelyn's final words carried a gentle request, soft yet earnest. If this story has carried you into calm, if the rain has whispered a memory into your heart, consider joining us again at Midnight Murmurs Radio. Subscribe, listen, and share the quiet magic of nights like this with others who seek the peace hidden in every tick of time. The rain, now almost silent, continued its delicate patter on the rooftops, on the cobblestones, on the world beyond the clockmaker's window, and in that soft, enveloping sound, Dorian felt the comfort of completion. The last chime echoed, thudding gently, and the night exhaled with him, leaving only the quiet murmur of rain and the lingering warmth of memory. 3 nights had passed since Dorian's last encounter with the silver clock, and Waverley Hollow awoke under a rain that seemed older than the town itself. It was no longer gentle, but soft enough to carry a sense of expectation, a rhythm that hinted at secrets yet untold. Evelyn Blackwood's voice entered the quiet air like a slow exhale. Welcome, dear listener, to the hours where rain remembers, where the town whispers its past and the clocks carry more than time. You may lie back now, close your eyes, and breathe with the rhythm of the drizzle. Allow your mind to release the day's burdens. Let your thoughts drift as the mist curls around rooftops, and feel the calm settling in your chest. Outside, the cobblestones glistened with reflection, each puddle mirroring an impossible fragment of memory. A wedding long past, a child running in the rain, a shadow that should have been gone. Dorian stood at the doorway of the clock shop, staring into the silvered night. The windows glowed faintly with golden light, though no lamp was burning. A sense of anticipation hummed in the air, delicate yet insistent. Each drop of rain struck the streets with a rhythm almost musical, echoing the beat of the clocks, still whispering in the shop behind him. Evelyn murmured, "Time holds on to those who cannot leave it, and rain remembers all that we forget." Listen closely, for tonight the hours will speak once more. He stepped forward, boots sinking slightly into the wet cobblestones, and noticed the reflections shifting beneath the puddles. They were no longer mere images of the town, but fragments of lives intertwined. The baker's lost love, the seamstress who waited decades for a letter that never came, a soldier's final glance toward a battlefield he would never leave. The rain carried them all, and with each drop, their stories pressed gently against his mind. Inside, the silver clock ticked faintly, though its hands did not move. Instead, the sound was embedded in the rhythm of the rain itself, echoing from every surface. Dorian reached out, feeling the pulse of countless hours beneath his fingers, vibrating through the very earth. He understood, with both awe and apprehension, that the rain had become more than water. It had become memory itself. Evelyn's voice soft further, guiding the listener deeper into calm. Breathe slowly. Feel the pattern of raindrops upon your skin. Hear the quiet echo of lives long past. Let yourself be carried by the story hidden in every drop. As he walked along the narrow street, the town seemed alive in a way it never had. The shadows of chimneys stretched impossibly long, twisting across the ground, each movement synchronized with the subtle pulse of the clocks. Windows glimmered with tiny reflections, some familiar, some foreign, and he felt the presence of those who had walked these streets before him and those who would never return. A sudden gust of wind brushed past, carrying the faint scent of lilac and wet oak, and for a moment Dorian glimpsed her, Elisa, standing beneath the eaves of a distant roof, her form translucent yet vivid, her eyes meeting his with a gentle, knowing smile. The rain seemed to respond, rising and falling in time with his heartbeat, forming concentric ripples in every puddle, every drop. He stepped closer, drawn by the subtle hum of time vibrating through the night. Evelyn whispered once more, somewhere in the rhythm of rain and the ticking of clocks, the past waits, and those who remember are given a chance to see it again. The town shifted around him. Lamplights glowed and dimmed, as if breathing. The distant church bell chimed once, but the sound was layered, carrying echoes of dozens of hours that had never truly ended. In that moment, Dorian felt the rain pressing stories into him, memories not his own, as though the town itself had decided to speak. He stood still, allowing each heartbeat, each drop, each whisper to settle in his chest. The silver clock ticked again, softly, a gentle cadence echoing from within the shop, through the streets, through the rain. And Evelyn's voice, tender as ever, concluded the night. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the rain carry you into the quiet heart of Waverley Hollow, where time remembers and memories linger, soft and eternal. The rain thickened, soft yet insistent, filling the narrow streets of Waverley Hollow with a steady rhythm like a heartbeat shared among all things. Dorian Halley followed it instinctively, each footstep splashing lightly in puddles that shimmered with reflections not just of buildings, but of moments long past. Evelyn Blackwood's voice lingered over the murmur of water. Breathe, dear listener. Let your body sink into the comfort of the night. Let your mind drift alongside the rain, and allow the town's secrets to unfold gently before you. The shop behind him glowed faintly through mist, a beacon of golden warmth, yet he did not return. Something in the cadence of the rain drew him onward, a subtle pull he could neither name nor resist. Between the cobblestones and the veils of fog, he found a path that led to the garden behind the old Waverley Cemetery, a place rarely visited by the townsfolk and almost forgotten by time itself. The wrought iron gate, half rusted, swung open as though welcoming him, the hinges creaking in perfect synchrony with the silver clock ticking somewhere behind him. Evelyn whispered, "Some places hold echoes that even the rain cannot wash away. Tonight, Dorian walks among them." The garden was wild, overgrown with ivy and ferns, slick with water, and the scent of damp earth mingled with faint lilac. Eliza's favorite, raindrops hung like fragile beads on the tips of leaves, each trembling with a secret memory. In the distance, a fountain trickled, though the water moved with a rhythm too deliberate, too musical, to be natural. Dorian stepped closer, noticing shapes in the mist shadows that shifted just beyond clarity. At first, they seemed like ordinary statues, weathered by years of rain. Yet as he moved, the shapes elongated, grew, and almost breathed. They were the echoes of lives long past, frozen in time, now softened by the persistent Evelyn's voice came lower, richer. Some memories are trapped, waiting for the right rhythm to release them. The rain brings them forth. Listen, and do not be afraid. A sudden swirl of wind brushed against Dorian's face, carrying whispers that seemed to rise from the soil itself, voices he knew he should not hear, yet recognized. A child calling for a mother, a woman sighing with unspoken longing, a man humming a lullaby, each sound intertwined with the gentle patter of rain, forming a chorus of the unseen. At the center of the garden, beneath an ancient oak, he found a sundial, its bronze face slick with water. The shadow it cast moved in ways impossible to reconcile with any sun, stretching and contracting as though alive. Dorian knelt, tracing the etchings with a finger, feeling the pulse of time beneath the metal. Here, the rain seemed to pause for a heartbeat, holding the world in delicate suspension. And there, barely visible through the mist, stood a figure, faint and glowing. It was Eliza. Her form shimmered, a spectral echo of the woman he loved, yet not sorrowful. She held out her hand, inviting, patient. Dorian's heart trembled. Every step closer felt like walking through decades of memory and rain. Evelyn's whisper curled around him. The garden holds what time could not release. Step forward, and you may touch the echoes of what was lost, and perhaps what may yet remain. He reached for her, hand outstretched. The air around him shimmered, droplets of rain suspended in midder-like stars, caught in a silver net. He felt a warmth that was not the sun, nor the lamp behind him, but something deeper, a heartbeat carried through time, through love, through all that he had feared to forget. The raindrops seemed to carry messages now, each patter a gentle phrase. Remember, forgive, let go. The figure of Elisa brightened, and the garden responded, leaves quivering, fountains spilling tiny arcs of light into the mist. Evelyn's voice, now a lullaby for the night, whispered, let the rain carry you, dear listener, through the memories that linger in shadow and light. Every heartbeat, every drop, every breath is part of a story waiting to be held. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The rain deepened, a steady silver curtain that hung over Waverley Hollow, like a memory made visible. Dorian Halley walked slowly through the garden behind the cemetery, every step softened by the damp earth and the gentle patter on the leaves. Evelyn Blackwood's voice, low and hypnotic, carried through the mist. Close your eyes, dear listener. Let your breath fall with the rhythm of the rain. Let the quiet sweep away the noise of the day and follow the echoes of what lingers. Each raindrop seemed purposeful, tapping in patterns that resonated with something older than the town, older than any clock or hourglass. Dorian's heart matched the rhythm unconsciously. Slow, steady, in step with the unseen cadence. Ahead, the garden opened into a clearing where gravestones jutted from the soil like the pages of a forgotten book. The names were faded, the dates almost illegible, yet the rain had etched each letter anew, glistening as if freshly carved. Shadows moved between the stones, indistinct at first, then forming into the shapes of people who had once walked these streets, now brought to life by the persistent drizzle. Each figure carried a fragment of the past, a lost conversation, a lullaby, a whispered promise. The wind rustled the branches of the oak trees overhead, carrying faint echoes of laughter and sorrow, weaving them into the soft rhythm of the rain. Evelyn's voice continued, hypnotic and serene. Some memories wait for the rain to awaken them. Some lives linger in the spaces between seconds. Listen carefully, for tonight Dorian will hear what the town has not spoken aloud in decades. Dorian stepped closer to the gravestones, his fingers tracing the etched names. With each touch, a memory surged, delicate and ephemeral. A child chasing a paper boat through a flooded gutter, a mother kneeling beside a window in worry, a blacksmith hammering quietly in the glow of dawn. These echoes pressed gently against his mind, each one a story, each one a life longing to be remembered. The silver clock ticked faintly in his mind, though he could no longer see it. Its rhythm intertwined with the rain, creating a symphony of moments suspended between memory and presence. In the center of the clearing, a faint light glimmered through the mist. Elisa. Her figure moved gracefully, stepping between gravestones as though guiding him through the past. She reached out, and the rain parted slightly around her fingertips, forming arcs of light that traced the shape of her hand. Dorian, she whispered, though the sound was carried not through air but through the pulse of the garden itself. Do you see them? Do you hear them? He nodded, heart pounding. Each drop of rain seemed now a messenger, delivering fragments of forgotten hours, unfinished stories, regrets and joys. I do, he murmured. I hear them. Evelyn's voice threaded softly through the garden. When one listens with the heart, even the rain can speak. Every echo is a life, every drop a memory, and every heartbeat a bridge between the living and those who linger. Dorian moved deeper into the clearing, following the faint shimmer of Eliza's light. A small fountain, almost hidden beneath overgrown ferns, began to spill its water in gentle arcs that caught the silver of the rain. The liquid sparkled as though stars had fallen from the sky, illuminating faces in the mist, townsfolk long gone, their expressions vivid yet fleeting. The rain carried their whispers, a soldier's farewell, a baker's song, a child's quiet cry. He felt their presence pressing softly against his chest, and he understood that the silver clock, the rain, and the garden were all part of a single truth. Time remembered, even when the world forgot. Evelyn's tone grew softer, a lullaby against the rhythm of the rain. And so, dear listener, as the echoes settle, allow yourself to drift with the story. Let the rain carry you through the memories, through the quiet heart of Waverley Hollow, where time bends gently and those who linger are never truly lost. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The rain thickened into a soft, shimmering veil, wrapping Waverley Hollow in silver light. Dorian Holley walked through the streets, puddles reflecting lanterns that flickered as though they remembered centuries past. Evelyn Blackwood's voice flowed through the mist, low and deliberate. Lie back, dear listener, and let the rain guide your thought. Feel its rhythm carry you into the quiet corners of time, where forgotten hours wait to be remembered. Each step Dorian took seemed guided by a pulse deeper than his own, a heartbeat shared by every droplet falling from the sky. The cobblestones glistened, mirroring the world above and below, a threshold between memory and presence. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls of the old buildings, bending with the motion of the wind, twisting and folding as if the town itself breathed in the cadence of the rain. Dorian paused at the center of the square, where the fountains had long since dried. Tonight, they flowed again, crystal arcs catching the faint moonlight, each droplet reflecting faces that had once walked these streets. Merchants, children, soldiers, and lovers long gone. Evelyn's voice whispered through the rhythm of falling water. Sometimes the past gathers itself when the present is still, and when it gathers, you my ear eat if you listen. A low murmur rose from the fountain's basin, the sound of dozens of voices layered over each other, weaving stories of joy and sorrow, triumph and regret. Dorian leaned closer, his hand touching the edge of the stone, feeling vibrations that were not the water's, but the echo of countless lives imprinted upon it. The raindrops danced across the surface, carrying messages through time, promises broken, laughter forgotten, tears shed quietly. Shadows shifted, forming figures that were both there and not, stepping from alleyways, gliding over cobblestones, each movement synchronized with the rhythm of the falling rain. Dorian recognized some, though only in fragments. A baker hums a lullaby. A seamstress smooths her apron with trembling hands. A soldier gazes at a letter he will never deliver. In the center, a faint glow gathered, swirling into a figure he knew well. Eliza, luminous, calm, and waiting. She moved with a grace that seemed to part the rain itself, her presence bending the droplets around her into delicate arcs of silver. "Dorian," she said, voice threading through both rain and shadow, "do you feel them? The hours we never lived, the moments we almost forgot." He nodded, heart thudding, feeling each echo press softly against his chest. The air seemed to vibrate with 1,000 memories, yet there was no chaos, only a gentle, pervasive rhythm. Evelyn's tone wrapped around the listener, steady and hypnotic. The rain remembers what the town has buried, what the clocks could not hold, what hearts still cling to in secret. Allow it to carry you. Let it fold around your mind like a soft blanket. And here, the echoes. Figures began moving together now, stepping into patterns that traced the life of Waverly Hollow, its festivals, its tragedies, its quiet nights of solitude and reflection. Lanterns swayed without wind, shadows danced without light, and every puddle reflected more than just the rain. Dorian stepped forward, drawn by the center of this gathering. His hand reached toward Eliza, and the glow extended like tendrils of light through the mist. The echoes pressed closer, soft and insistent, until he could feel their stories mingling with his own, a tapestry of time weaving through the present. The fountain's music slowed, the rain softened, and the shadows began to fold back into the buildings. Evelyn's voice, tender and gentle, concluded, "As the story fades, let your breath match the quiet of the night. Allow the memories to settle, the rain to lull you, and drift into the peaceful heart of Waverly Hollow. Let the forgotten hours rest, and let yourself rest with them." Dorian exhaled slowly, feeling the pulse of the town in gentle resonance with his own. The rain continued its quiet rhythm outside. The streets hushed, the shadows still, and for a long moment, the world held its breath. Within that breath, I understood time was never truly lost, only waiting for someone to listen, and in listening, even the most fragile memory could find peace. The rain had grown thicker, heavier, though still soft enough to shimmer like silver threads across the cobblestones of Waverly Hollow. Dorian Halley moved carefully through the mist-laden streets, feeling the pulse of the town beneath his boots. Every drop carried weight, each echoing a memory suspended between past and present. Evelyn Blackwood's voice threaded through the quiet, calm yet insistent. "Close your eyes, dear listener, and breathe with the rhythm of the rain. Let the town's stories wrap around you, their whispers settling into your mind and heart. Ahead!" Ahead, shadows twisted, flickering between the buildings, shaping themselves into fleeting silhouettes of the lives long gone. Dorian paused, recognizing faces he had only glimpsed in fragments before. The baker, who lost his daughter in the autumn of 1873, the seamstress, who waited decades for a letter that never arrived, the young soldier whose gaze lingered on the horizon until he disappeared into legend. Each memory pressed gently into him, soft but insistent, as if urging him toward a choice. Evelyn continued, "When the past gathers, it seeks not only to be seen, but to be acknowledged, and sometimes acknowledgement requires courage." Dorian's chest tightened. The silver clock's resonance, faint yet steady, seemed to follow him through the streets. Its ticking blended with the falling rain, forming a rhythm that both comforted and unsettled. He felt the presence of Eliza beside him, her glow soft, warm, a tether to the living and the dead. "Dorian," she whispered, voice carried not by air but by the pulse of the world around him. "You can choose to let them rest or let them linger. Their echoes need a guide." He inhaled slowly, letting the damp night air fill his lungs. The shadows began to move closer, almost forming a swirling dance that reflected centuries of unspoken sorrow and joy. Each figure's eyes met his, silently pleading, urging him to act. The fountains in the town square, long dormant, began spilling water again in delicate arcs, the droplets reflecting the lantern light in countless miniature rainbows. The town's heartbeat had synchronized with the rain, the fountains, the shadows, and with Dorian's own pulse. Evelyn whispered gently, "The choice is yours. Step forward with intention, with awareness, and you may help the past find peace. Hesitate, and the echoes may linger longer than they should." Dorian's hand lifted, brushing lightly against the mist before him. Every drop he touched carried warmth, a fragment of life suspended in time. He felt the weight of the memories pressing in, yet understood that they were not burdens. They were stories, waiting to be honored. He stepped forward decisively, allowing the rain to guide his movements. Shadows swirled around him, forming a circle of light and mist. The echoes of the town, once fragmented, began to align, harmonizing with the rhythm of the silver clock that ticked unseen yet unmistakably near. Eliza's hand brushed against his, a tether connecting the living and the departed. And Dorian felt a profound understanding. He could offer acknowledgement, a gentle release, a guiding hand through the liminal space between life and memory. The rain intensified slightly, carrying with it a chorus of whispers, thanks, sighs, laughter, and long-forgotten lullabies. Each sound folded into the next, forming a tapestry of lives reconciled with the night. Evelyn's voice, calm and soft, wove through the symphony. Allow yourself to feel the stories, dear listener, to understand that every heartbeat, every drop, every shadow is part of a memory-seeking piece. As the story fades, let the rain cradle you into a restful sleep. Dorian closed his eyes, sensing the town breathe, the memories settle, the shadows recede, the fountains slowed, the rain softened to a delicate drizzle, and the streets glimmered quietly under the silver light of the night. He opened his eyes, and though the figures were gone, their presence lingered in the subtle rhythm of falling drops, in the gentle hum of the unseen clocks, and in the heartbeat of Waverley Hollow itself. The night exhaled, carrying with it a sense of resolution, calm, and a soft knowledge that even the most restless echoes could find a place to rest, if only someone remembered to guide them there. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, silver threads falling lazily over the cobblestones of Waverley Hollow. Dorian Halley stood at the center of the square, the echoes of the town's long-forgotten lives settling into the quiet spaces around him. Evelyn Blackwood's voice, calm and serene, drifted through the night. Lie back, dear listener. Allow the rhythm of the rain to ease every thought, every worry. Let your mind follow its gentle path and drift into the quiet corners of memory. The fountains sparkled faintly, their arcs of water catching the lamplight, creating tiny prisms that shimmered like stars fallen into the town. Shadows moved subtly between buildings, bending and stretching, then slowly retreating, as if the town itself exhaled. Dorian's heart, once heavy with the weight of decades, now felt light, synchronized with the rain's soft cadence. Each droplet carried a fragment of the past, now returned to rest. He could hear the whispers of those he had guided, faint, melodic, a lullaby of reconciled memories. The baker's quiet laughter, the seamstress's relieved sigh, the soldier's final goodbye. In the center of the square, Eliza's faint glow lingered, delicate and warm, a gentle tether between Dorian and the stories he had helped release. She stepped closer, extending her hand. The air around them shimmered, droplets suspended for a heartbeat, sparkling with silver light. "You have remembered," she whispered, voice merging with the patter of rain. "You have allowed the past to find its peace." Dorian reached for her, feeling the warmth, the pulse of time flowing through him and the town alike. Evelyn's voice, tender and hypnotic, wove through the scene. "Let the stories settle, dear listener. Let the echoes fade gently, carried by the rain, and allow yourself to drift alongside them into the quiet heart of the night." The cobblestones glistened, reflecting lantern light, raindrops dancing in subtle patterns. Shadows of trees swayed softly, their motion synchronized with the faint ticking of unseen clocks, each pulse a reminder that even as moments pass, memory endures. Dorian closed his eyes, letting the rain embrace him fully, feeling the town's heartbeat align with his own. The square seemed suspended in a delicate balance, neither past nor present, but a quiet bridge between. The fountains slowed, the rain soft further, and the mist wrapped the buildings in a silver haze. He opened his eyes to find Eliza is a form fading, dissolving into the mist, yet leaving a lingering warmth that promised presence even in absence. Evelyn whispered softly, "As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the rain carry your mind to calm. Let the echoes settle in your heart and rest in the quiet of Waverly Hollow." Dorian exhaled a deep, slow breath, feeling the tension of years, of lost memories, of untold stories dissolve into the night. The town, hushed and serene, seemed to acknowledge him in a silent nod, the silver clock somewhere behind him ticking in perfect rhythm, a heartbeat of time remembered and reconciled. Lanterns glimmered gently, their lights softened by the final drops of rain. The air smelled faintly of lilac and damp earth, a comforting reminder of lives lived and memories cherished. Dorian turned slowly, taking in the empty streets, the quiet fountains, the lingering mist. Every echo had found a place to rest. Every memory had been honored, and for a long, hintel moment, Waverly Hollow and its keeper of time stood in perfect stillness, embraced by the lullaby of rain. Evelyn's final words drifted like a soft sigh over the listener. If tonight's story has brought you calm, if the rain has whispered memories into your heart, consider joining us again at Midnight Murmurs Radio. Subscribe, listen, and share the quiet magic of nights like this, where time remembers and the past rests peacefully under the gentle rhythm of rain. The last droplets fell silently, leaving only the soft murmur of memory, the faint ticking of clocks, and the serene knowledge that even in the quietest hours, the heart of Waverly Hollow continues to beat gently and eternally.